If there's one thing that the last 6 months have taught me, it's that life doesn't care about a perfect January journal setup. Between work, travel, my dog passing on, and the new puppy bounding into my life, fast-paced and eventful does not even begin to describe 2026. And since I'm a firm believer that our notebooks should grow with us, I'm taking the time to do my usual mid-year review and revisit my system as we start the second half of the year. And so grab your coffee, tea, or matcha, and let's get to it. I'm going to split the video up into what has worked, what got completely shelved, and what evolved into something else. I'll begin with the gold standard. This is my traveler's notebook Yudo TN. So the cover might look a little unusual. This was a limited edition cover released in Japan to accompany a film. It's been one of my absolute favorites, and I find that the blue of the cover is also just so interesting compared to the typical regular traveler's notebook blue, which leans a touch more green in my experience. It's also patinaed quite nicely, so I got this, I believe, a year ago. I've used leather conditioner on the cover as well as a Saphir brand mirror gloss, which has helped me get this really nice, protected but well-worn look. So this Yosegi wooden charm actually came from my recent Japan trip in late spring, and I feel that it's accompanied the Yudo cover quite well. As I mentioned in the start of the year, this houses my quarterly insert and any of my travel inserts. Whenever I go on a trip, this is the cover that goes with me, and I suppose that's also why, compared to all my other covers, this is the one that has patinaed the most. It's also the one that's gotten the most customization in a sense, because I've even stamped the inside of the journal with the stamps in Traveler's Factory Kyoto. I've also added a few patches here and there. This always has a craft folder in it because I often put ephemera and things that I would like to stick into my inserts in the folder for safekeeping and just for easy access whenever I will actually get around to journal. This has been well used, well loved, and I've been really liking how it's worked out for me. The travel insert has also gotten quite chunky because of all the ephemera I've stuck into it. Some of my adventures have also been documented on the channel, so if you're interested in seeing some day trips I did, then feel free to check those out. Because it's so chunky, I've actually had to transfer my Q2 insert, which I'm about to close out, into my Camel Traveler's Notebook, which has also served me quite well. So this is actually an original Traveler's Notebook Camel notebook. I did test out some leather conditioner on the back, which is why the back is darker than the usual lighter camel suede, and I like how it's been aging. This is another of my most well-used covers because I use it for my prayer journals. So I think I've filled up about 4 or 5 different inserts just using this cover as my prayer journal. This is my latest one, the Hosho paper insert from Kyoto. And as I mentioned, my Q2 insert is here because it just wouldn't fit in the Yudo. Once I close this out, I'll be archiving it in my quarterly archive. So this is already housing Q1 2026, which I used the yellow craft insert for. And my system as regards quarterly insert memory keeping hasn't really changed. I usually stick photos, date stickers, general stickers, and ephemera into my quarterly inserts. And I like keeping them in these binders. So they're a good representation of how full the year has been. For shorter trips, I include them in the quarterly insert, but for longer ones, I do have dedicated inserts like for my spring Japan trip. And for the quarterly inserts, I usually end it with a letter to myself or just reflections and insights from the end of the quarter. I do like using traveler's notebooks for this because they're not as rigid as, let's say, a dated insert would be. These inserts come blank, just like this, and it gives me the freedom to journal when I want to because I find that memory keeping shouldn't be so regimented. At least in my experience, that's what works best for me. This is the 3rd year that I've done this system, so I have a 2024 binder, a 2025, and now a 2026 that I'm filling up. This is from a takeout bag that I ordered, I think back in April, and they had written some quotes on the bag. I just ordered burgers, but I got some wisdom. It says, "Trust the silence, growth is happening." And I really like that this was the opener to my second quarter insert because that's really one of the best ways to describe how the second quarter has gone. In fact, even the first half of 2026, I'd say. I took my first solo trip to another country. I explored a university that I'm hopefully going to be able to attend and take my master's in someday. And while I lost my companion, my 11-year-old husky. Surprisingly, another furry companion that I've been so blessed to have come into my life has forced me out of bed at 6 a.m. in the morning and increased my step count substantially. So, yes, eventful and colorful is one excellent way to describe all the growth that happened earlier this year. And documenting them in quarterly inserts like this has really helped me slow down and be more mindful of the days that pass. It's so easy to just be purely focused on the present or the future, but completely miss the number of things that happen to us with each day that passes. I think that's one of the reasons why this system has just been so consistent for me, because of the sheer benefit that it's brought to my life. I'm pretty sure this will continue on through the next few years. Another thing that I think contributes to the success of this quarterly journaling system for me is the modularity of the Traveler's Notebook, as well as its slim. So because it's similar to an A5 Slim, I get enough space to journal to my heart's content and stick whatever I want to stick. This was wrapping paper from the matcha bowl that I picked up in Japan, one of the flea markets that I went to. And it's gorgeous, by the way. And the other thing is that the inserts themselves don't have all that much paper, and I thrive on the sense of completion I get whenever I close something out. It's slim enough that it won't take the whole year to finish. One insert I find has been just right for a quarter for me, and yet it's not so tiny that I feel cramped and end up not using it or don't have enough space to use it for what I need, which happened to me in one other notebook that I'll be talking about in today's video. So if you're someone who likes that happy middle of having enough space but not having too much pressure of having to fill up a really thick notebook, then maybe you could try using the Traveler's Notebook inserts or accessories that are similar to this setup. So that's that. That's my current gold standard. Incidentally, the pictures that you saw inside my quarterly journals and my travel journals were printed using this. This is the Xiaomi Zinc printer. So it uses a heat transfer method to print photos without ink. And what I like about the photos it prints is that they are sticker backed. So I just peel them off and they're ready to go. It's not exactly the most color accurate, it's not the best, but it is quite affordable, and that's one of the things that encourages me to use it. So I have a ready supply of the sticker paper, and what I do is I put the photos onto an album on my phone, and usually once or twice a month I set to printing them and stick them in the quarterly journals as you saw. And then whenever I have time, I populate them with thoughts, with text, with stickers, and then it goes into my archive binder. I'm not as text heavy in my quarterly journals as I am in another item that you'll see. For me, I find this compartmentalization between visual journaling, which involves stickers, ephemera, photos, versus just getting my thoughts out with pen and paper. It really helps me to keep them segregated and encourages a lot of use. Perhaps it's because whenever I start writing, the words will just begin to flow, and fiddling with stickers, with photos, with junk journaling is a completely different mental space for me that tends to interrupt the thoughts that I'm having. So I don't have the neatest handwriting, especially when the thoughts are flowing. My hand starts writing faster, which means my handwriting suffers. But when I'm in a journaling headspace, usually I have all the stickers out and the photos, and it's just a very visual and tactile experience. So perhaps the difference of those two headspaces are why I have found that keeping them separate or in separate tools has really helped me a lot. Okay, next up is work. We've touched briefly on journaling, and we've also talked about how I memory keep visually in these traveler's notebooks. Now, my day-to-day work lives in my Hobonichi Weeks. So I think this is also the third year that I've been using the Weeks system for work, and I always get the Weeks Mega. This is the Hobonichi Dragon cover, by the way, this red thing. I really like that it comes with a lot of pockets and place to store my pens and tools that I typically use. Although I would like to show you evidence of my new puppy. He munched on my Unijet stream. This is a new multi-pen I've been trying after using the Pilot Cutter for about 6 years now, because it's built in with a pencil, and the light touch ballpoint ink glides like a gel pen but can write on any surface and dries really quickly like a ballpoint. It was working before my puppy chomped on it. I have another one coming in the mail. What's nice about the Jetstream is that there are gel refills that fit into this pen as well. Plus, the reason why I moved away from Pilot Coletto is it holds more ink. The amount of things I have to write for work and in general to process my thoughts I often find myself finishing up the refills within a span of a few weeks. So with the Jetstream, I found that I had to replace the refills less, but now I have to replace the entire body of the pen because of my highly energetic Shepherd pup. So yeah, this is my dragon cover. I've used this 2 years now, and the Hobonichi Weeks system, I've used it for work for about 3 years on. So as mentioned, I use the Mega. This is the Year of the Horse bow and tie cover, and I've covered it with this old Kinbor plastic cover that I had. I can't really do a full flip through because it contains a lot of work information, but just so you know, the Mega comes with a lot more notes pages than the typical Hobonichis. So I believe this comes with 200 plus notes pages in the back. It's 218 in the gorgeous cream Tomoe River paper, which is fountain pen friendly, but also I find some gel pens tend to smudge a bit on it. So my meeting notes and daily to-dos live on the back in my notes pages, and the weeklies, so I'm flipping backwards to show you the blank layout. This works really well for me to see an overview of my week and then just have general notes or tasks on the right side. At the start of the year, I had experimented with a new layout. On the monthlies, I actually used to do my full schedule here, but ever since I started implementing a bit stricter boundaries between work and home life, I've left this planner at my work desk, which means the schedule can't really live here because this book is not always with me and lives at the office. So since about April, the monthlies have remained relatively unused. I mainly rely on my phone and my digital calendars for the work events, especially since we got a bit busier. And on top of that, the layout that I started doing from January through Feb also kind of fell off because I don't really refer to the weeks portion currently. But that layout was also quite helpful in the first quarter of the year. So on the right side, I would leave these boxes for my personal matters, usually to track exercise, because seeing an empty box encouraged me to catch up in a way with my physical activity. And then this little graph up here tracks my energy levels for the day. Pretty much subjective. It's not a hard scale, just how I feel on a scale of 1 to 5. And then the red would track my output. So if I did a lot of work, meetings, exercised pretty heavily, that's what fills the red bar. And line graph is my mood for the day. So this was really helpful for me to see. I actually had several days where I was low energy, but I had to force a lot of output. It's a pretty good predictor of the fact that my mood would be lower towards the end of the week and I'd have to recover a lot on the weekend. So doing this system was really helpful for me throughout the first quarter of the year. And when I lost my dog, it also helped me be mindful of acknowledging the mental space where I was at. While I'm not the type of person who would let work slip when I'm going through something personal, I've also learned that it's important to acknowledge our own emotions because what we avoid feeling tends to magnify and stay longer than it should. This really helped me process the grief of losing a companion. I also forgive myself for not strictly sticking to it in the recent months because again, if it's for work, then you do what works for you. My notebooks and planners for work are very functional and they're meant to get me to output the deliverables and work on the things that I have to work on. If a full week looks like a blank page and a lot of output done, then that's fine by me. As much as I would like my Hobonichi Weeks to look like all of those aesthetic layouts and daily journal uses that I see on Pinterest and Instagram, because this is my work weeks, I've realized if the weekly overview is spotty, it's not a failure. It's just not the part that's doing the work. The notes pages are the actual bullet journal and they're consistent. I think actually I've used up more than half of the notes pages already. So I'm about here. So I have this much left of notes pages for the balance of the year. A friendly reminder for anyone watching this is that a tool doing 70% of its target goals beats one that's doing 100% of it in a way that's forced. The metric of success is not the number of pages you filled, but how you feel about the pages you're filling, if that makes sense. So that's my weeks, which is for work. That's my work notebook system. Now we start talking about some of the notebooks that changed throughout the year. But before that, I need to drink some tea. Okay, yummy. This is the Miyako no Shiro matcha from Hokkaido, by the way. This is my favorite matcha of all time. So I'm really happy that I'm on this tin right now. For anyone interested, I believe they ship internationally. So I'll leave a link in the description down below if you want to have some tea with me. What do I talk about next? I think I will talk about my A5. Okay, this is my Lifebook. I've spoken about this in a previous video, but if you haven't seen it, this is the Hobonichi 5-year A5 cover. with artwork by Hiroko Kubota. And it's got a little bit dirty, but nothing too crazy. Now, this is the Chronicle planner from Faded Chronicle. Gorgeous cover, gorgeous suede, really wonderful paper. And I have gotten a good amount of use out of this. Work and even travel and the happenings of each quarter are just a few aspects of my life. My life book is intended to help me clarify what my goals are and keep me close to them. So I always start it with a vision board, which I enjoy making every January. I think a lot of us in the journal community are like this. And then I track certain areas of focus each quarter. I kind of fell off on this in the second quarter because I got so busy, but I will very likely be resuming it on quarter 3 onwards because of the fact that I'm starting classes alongside work soon. I still do not know what to do with this bit. This year at a glance tends to come in many different planners, and I've seen a lot of people use it nicely, but I just can't seem to make it work for me. I initially tried, I think, the year in moods, and then I went over that and just got rid of it all, and then shifted it to tracking my movement patterns. So you can see here, the blue dots are for walking. After I lost my dog, my walks had become spotty in Feb and March. And then when my neighbor, who happens to breed white Swiss Shepherds, led to me adopting one of his new puppies, I have not missed. I actually haven't populated May and June, but I haven't missed more than 1 or 2 days in the past 4 months just because of this high drive boy. So I walk him twice a day, and I really ought to update this. Yeah, I used this well in the first half of the year. A bit different than I'm used to because it doesn't gather all the months together. So it has this monthly overview, a blank page, plus 1 line per day, which I had not really used in the past. And then this monthly overview, which I learned to really enjoy. I began color coding exercise versus projects versus work. And the A5 size really gave me enough room to properly plan. But you'll notice that the next page goes straight into the weeklies. So it doesn't gather all the months at the start of the notebook like I'm used to. I know the vertical weekly layout works for me when it comes to memory keeping. So I did mention earlier that I segregate much of the written reflection and journaling and memory keeping versus the visual memory keeping, which involves photos, ephemera, junk journaling, and thickens up my notebooks to the traveler's notebook. And this life book is where I keep my journals. I tried it with the Sterling Ink traveler's notebook size vertical weekly before, and it worked really well. But I found that I had run out of space because once I start journaling, I can easily fill up 2 to 3 pages at a time. So I like that this has more space in the weeklies, and it has a bunch of free pages in the back. It gives me a lot of space to work through. But this book also has a hybrid weekly layout. So for every vertical weekly, it also has the same week in this hybrid style. So let me flip to a blank one just so that it's easier for me to show you. It has these horizontal boxes here on the left and then vertical boxes to the top. I had planned to use this for planning, but a big insight is that I'm not the kind of person who can mix journaling and planning in one spot. And secondly, the question of where the notebook will be used is really important when designing your system. For me, where I do my planning varies. I don't always do my planning here at my desk at home. Sometimes it's in the office, sometimes it's when I'm out and about. So the size of this book and the fact that I designated it to live here on my desk at home meant that the planning portion of it actually didn't get used all that much. But the vertical weekly portion of it has gotten used quite substantially. So I will just briefly flip through so that you can see the weeks as they had passed. I really enjoy vertical journaling. I learned that with the Sterling Ink, and I even need more space. I'm not the kind of person who plans her layouts. I just have one structure, which is I start the upper section with a Bible verse, so a verse of the day, and the rest is just where I feel like putting stickers or generally writing, and I really enjoy seeing it get filled up as the week goes by. So you can see that these vertical weekly layouts were really well used. I did experiment with this. I would use some markers to block out space to track events. It's easier to see and it's easier to track versus my just general journaling and reflection. So the boxes, I tried as much as possible to contain what happened during the day, just so I have a reference. The horizontal / hybrid, I originally planned to use this to track my sleep time, wake time, whether I exercised that day, my mood, and step count. But for some reason, this just didn't really work all that well. So I think I'll be revising my Lifebook for next year. This is actually one of the most changeable slots in my entire notebook ecosystem. And I like that because it offers me some novelty and experimentation, but keeps enough structure that my notebooks achieve what I intend them to achieve. Keep me more mindful, slow me down in a world that's just nonstop information, and get me away from screens because I stare at screens most of the day for my job. So yeah, there's my vertical weekly journals. I really love this. Sometimes it's chaotic, sometimes it's more harmonious and colorful, sometimes it's just black ink, sometimes it's mostly stickers. So it's one of those things where I balance structure with freedom, and it does what I need it to do for me. So yeah, I'll be filling up the rest of the year, probably focused on the vertical journal aspect of it. But who knows, maybe the hybrid weekly layout will suddenly work out for me. For people who are more desk-bound and do like hybrid planning, this is a journal that I can really recommend. The quality of the paper is great. I did not experience much ghosting or bleeding, and I love the build quality. So congrats to the Faded Chronicle brand. I hope that they continue to release more great products. Now, in the free pages, I do have a few collections which are intended to help me out. Again, keep me closer and more mindful of the goals that I set at the start of the year, rather than forget all about them. At the start of the year, there are a bunch of words that kick around in my mind, and as the year goes on, I add to them based on the themes that I feel just intuitively work out for me. And I do use fountain pens, so I also have a year full of ink. As I clean and re-ink my pens, I try to make note of what ink is in which pen, and then at the end of the year, I'll have this full spread of a really nice colorful page here. Then just at the start of the year, you know how you're filled with all these thoughts on your life, reviewing the aspects that you'd like to work on, the outcomes and purpose that you'd like. So if you're interested in how I do that with the SPIREF framework, I do have another video, which is one of the first ones that I released when I started this channel on. I've done for a couple of years now, which takes inspiration from Danielle from My Dandelion Diaries, is this monthly graph. Consistently, I've tracked my step count, which is the vertical bar chart that you see against this rightmost vertical axis, and then my mood in the shaded line graph, and what I feel my exercise level was in the dashed shaded line graph. Then against this, I've expanded it, so I track my sleep. This band in black ink is the target range where I should be sleeping, so that's 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And as you can see, in January, I still had the same problem I've had all my life, where I sleep too late and wake up as a result later than I want to be. Now, this substantially changed after I got my puppy. I like doing this system because populating the data, which is usually stored on my Garmin watch or my phone, I get a lot of insights each month, and it helps mentally cement the area of focus for the next month. So I don't really fill this in daily. This one gets populated, let's say, once a week or even twice a month. And once I see all the data come together, it just clicks something in my mind that, oh, your poor sleep tends to contribute to a decrease in your mood or a decrease in your exercise levels because you're too tired, etc. And there's a lag of about 2 to 3 days, something like that. So it's really substantially helped me gather data about myself. By slowing down and being a bit more analog about the data, it's actually not only given me more insights, but also cemented the actions that I need to take to drive towards outcomes that I want. So yeah, this system is something that I will continue doing. Okay, you can see in March, the 17th was when I brought my puppy home, and my step count just stayed high over that period. The second page for each monthly graph, I leave flexible. Sometimes I record the ink changes that I did. Other times I journal. I have May and June to fill out because I got busy. But I'm really excited to see what insights those bring for me. I've learned from previous years not to set up the monthly graph all until December because sometimes there's certain tweaks in the metrics that I want to do, and not setting up the graphs allows me to make that tweak. So for example, I found that I didn't really need the second page all that much, and I decided to put the monthly graph on one page instead moving forward. So that's just one example of why flexibility is also important when considering your notebook ecosystem. I'm not the kind of person that likes to set something up perfectly in one go and then just not use it. So predicting and allowing for some flexibility has been one of the biggest contributors in consistency of use, not just in my analog tools, but in my life in general. This is another collection I have. This is a book nook. So every quarter, I print out small cover pages of books that I'm reading. So I finished Guards in April and Cardinal of the Kremlin. I'm halfway through Urban Planet and How Asia Works. So I really should be filling this one up. Yeah, it's just a nice visual representation of the books I'm reading and reminds me of when I was reading what. The rest of the rear parts are free pages for journaling for me. And I get to use my fountain pens. The quality of the paper is really nice. The spreads end up colorful and very focused, my thoughts, rather than obsessing about sticker placements and such. I'll be using this for the rest of the year, likely filling up the vertical weeklies, and I don't know what I'll be using the monthlies for. I'll probably turn them into something more visual and more journaling oriented rather than planning. So let's move on to the tools that completely got shelved. Okay, my incense has fully burnt up at this point, so let's pull something out again, and that should accompany us for the second half of this video. I love this little tatami coaster. It's just so cute. We are now going to talk about my tiny notebooks. This is the fountain pen that I've been enjoying using with my pocket notebooks, by the way. This is the D-Like Element, which is a very affordable dupe of the Kaweco Lilliput and I think the Traveler's Notebook brass pen. And this is the brass version, which I really like. It has kind of a patina on it, and I stuck the Kaweco clip. It actually just comes this way. Please ignore Atlas's fur. So yeah, I really like these. They're very affordable, they are very portable, and they have a nice heft to them. So this black version, it's got this sort of carbon fiber thing going on. So I really like how textured it makes the body. This one has a artist's nib or a Fudenosuke nib. I don't know if the camera will be able to pick it up, but it's a little bit like bent at the end. And I load this up with Platinum Carbon Black, which is a permanent fountain pen ink that just glides so beautifully. Great for notes on the go, and notes that if the notebook gets wet are not at risk of blurring and being lost forever. Okay, let's get to the notebooks. This is my TN Passport in olive, and it houses my pens for ants, which I will probably continue to keep in here because sometimes I'm hit with the urge to sketch. At the start of this year, despite this system working for me for a solid year last year, I got the itch to change it. And because ADHD, try something new, experiment is in my blood, I picked up this Hobonichi A6 in my November Japan trip. I added a plastic cover, which thankfully I did because my puppy had chewed on this at some point. And I inserted at first just this Hobonichi Avec. So for those who aren't familiar, Hobonichi is a brand from Japan that does very popular planners, largely because of the quality of the paper, the lay flat binding, and the joyful colors of their interior pages, and the sheer variety of covers that they release each year. The Avec splits the year into 2 books, January to June, and the second half is July to December. There's my 2 doggies. And I tried swapping out my TN Passport, which is my everyday carry, for this one instead. My everyday carry notebook is, as explained by the name, what I carry every day. It houses mainly space for my budget and my errands for the month. These are all non-work related errands, just personal stuff that I either have to do when I'm out and about or just generally have to remember to do, like pull Japanese yen, set up Atlas's vet clear book, list a bunch of stuff for sale which got bumped off from May to June, etc. I get to cross it out as the month goes along. And because the inserts are blank, they give me the flexibility to just write whatever, whenever. And because it's so tiny, it's very easy for me to pull out and refer to the errands when I'm out and about. The inserts also have enough space for me to jot down random thoughts while I'm out that I don't necessarily feel the need to archive or refer back to. They just help me process whatever's going on at the time. And it's tiny enough that it's always with me. The binding of this traveler's notebook is different than the usual ones, which are horizontal. That's because I'm using a plotter bandwidth lifter. I insert it in this craft folder. I prefer the vertical binding when it comes to my everyday carry. Tried to use this Hobonichi Avec, which has the quarterly trackers that I really liked in the sterling ink but ended up not using here. Where you do your notes, I find, is the biggest predictor of whether or not you'll actually use the notebook. Whenever I'm filling in a streak or tracking certain habits, it's usually at the start of my day. That's been successful with my Lifebook because I start my day with morning pages at my desk at home. And because this everyday carry lives in my bag, the visual prompting of seeing the notebook doesn't happen and I don't pull it out. Hence, blank pages. For my work weeks, blank pages are not a sign of failure of use in that use case. But in this case, the everyday carry, I kind of fell off tracking my budget and ended up doing it on different like post-its earlier in the year, and even my monthly tracking of my exercise and my schedules. So this has the monthly layouts, and then it goes into daily pages. So you'll see it's 1 page per day. You get 2 pages when it's open this way, and you have a bunch of Japanese quotes and sayings down below, which I cannot read because most of them are kanji, and no blank pages in the back. So no room for free writing like I used to have. And for some reason, I really struggled with dated daily pages like this. Missing daily pages with the Hobonichi Avec put a lot of pressure on me, and I realized that my everyday carry notebook can't have the level of rigidity that my chosen tool offered. There was a mismatch, which led me to not being able to use the tool. Beyond that, the A6 size also felt a bit off. It's too big to be a true pocket notebook. So if you look at this, my hand is bigger. My hand is full of fountain pen ink because I was journaling this morning. Yeah, if you look at the pocket notebook that I used to use, the Traveler's Notebook Passport, it's a true pocket notebook. My hand is even bigger than this. But the A6 is large enough that, yes, you have more space, but not enough space that I would really need once I start journaling full throttle. Yet it's still too big to really literally shove into a pocket. So it wasn't that weird in between. Plus, it had more rigidity than I needed it to have as an everyday carry. And so I completely shelved this. I tried to use the first page of the month for errands, but it was just flipping back through the blank pages gave me more stress and I ended up getting distracted. You'll notice that I kept attempting to change layouts every single day. It was good for experimentation, but the main thing it taught me was that my everyday carry requires a different kind of tool. All is not lost though, because experiments mean that you pivot when you need to pivot. I tried to pivot earlier in the second quarter as well. So I added the weekly supplement, which ended up, first of all, being eaten by Atlas, my puppy, when he was in his teething phase. And I only barely recovered the rear by taping up a big sticker onto it. But the main reason this didn't work out for me was because it was just too tiny. So as you saw in my vertical weekly earlier, I need a lot of space, so this did not really get used. And then I got an A6 blank notebook, which I thought would fulfill the same facility as my Traveler's Notebook Passport, which it did for a while. I used it for journaling. This is when we cremated my dog. I was able to use it for that, errands, etc. But again, I ran into the size issue. So even though this notebook is so cute, and it seems to be a pocket notebook, I guess the sweet spot for me for a true pocket notebook is something that's this tiny. Well, the way I had this set up, the A6, was the Avec on the right side here, and the free notebook on the left side. Just so you know that if you're someone for whom that setup might be able to work, it fits in this kind of cover really well. No overhang, nice, but quite chunky. So you see what I mean when you compare how pocketable this is to this. Really good if you're the kind of person who often brings bigger bags or will keep this just on your desk or doesn't mind pulling this out at a cafe if you're on the go. While this got shelved, I actually ended up having another notebook with me. It's kind of stuffed full to the brim now. It's my Tokyo Station Traveler's Notebook, which I picked up at the Manila Pen Show. I'd been using this for my Japanese lessons. So this is for my classes. I have my hiragana and all the grammar lessons notes here. And I also have room for my little fountain pen, my other clicky pen, and then a pair of scissors plus some tea and wipes. And I would always have this with me. So I added a sort of larger version everyday carry. And it's been working out quite well because I already had the habit of pulling this out for my classes. So it was always with me. And installing a monthly overview portion to help keep track of my personal scheduling matters it seemed to work. I'm anticipating that in the latter half of this year, I'm starting an online graduate certificate program alongside my work and alongside my Japanese classes, my fitness regimen, and all the upkeep that having a high drive shepherd dog brings. I anticipate that I will need more space to schedule. For the moment, because I'm the kind of person that leans towards use what's working, I'm staying with this and keeping my little Tian passport shelved. But I did order the Sterling Ink academic planner, which is kind of perfect because it starts, I believe, in July 2026 and goes through to next year, June or July as well. Because I'm starting in the fall term, which begins end of August, it's really fitting. I ordered the academic planner in the vertical weekly layout because that's something that my brain just processes really well. The front half of this will be taken up by the academic planner, and then my specific class notes, Japanese in the next insert, and then my graduate certificate notes in a third insert. So I'm excited to receive that planner, and we'll see how it takes me through the second half of the year. I picked this up at the Manila Pen Show, and I really loved how battered it's become. For some reason, the design, the more grizzly it looks, appeals to me. And as with all my everyday carries, these get tossed into my bag. They'll pick up a lot of nicks and scratches, and the dark brown is just like the olive. It showcases it really well. I hope that this dark brown starts to get shiny, like my olive has. I really love the patina that this has formed. It speaks to a lot of use, and that's something that brings me joy, clearly. So yeah, that's my everyday carry evolution right now. Now, you might think, oh, what a waste. What will this A6 be for now? Will it be lonely and just be kept on the shelf? The blank notebook is undated, so I can revive it anytime. And taking a look at the mismatch between what the notebook offers, which is mainly rigidity and a daily page system. If you're the kind of person who can write on a daily page when it's not in fact that date, then this should offer no problem for you. But for my EDC, I already identified that what this notebook offers is not what my needs are for that use. I am trying one final experiment with the A6 size for the year. I mentioned that the Avec comes in 2 books, right? I decided to put the July version of the book into this gorgeous happy yellow cover to offer a sort of refresh for the rest of the year. I realized when examining the mismatch between my use case and what the first half of the Avec book offered, what I could actually use the second half for. I'm now at the point in my Japanese classes where a daily study habit is critical, and that's a form of rigidity that I need. So while this didn't work for my everyday carry use, because those are periodic rather than daily, this might work better to implement the daily study habit that I need. I plan to use this book to practice my quiz drills, vocabulary, and hiragana, katakana, and kanji familiarity for my Japanese every single day. These small pages are just enough. I can't exactly write 2 to 3 pages worth of journaling in Japanese just yet, though I do hope to build up to that someday. I discovered about myself that I can't abide a blank daily page or too many blank daily pages. Just might be the push I need to really get going on my daily Japanese language study habit. Hopefully by the time I'm doing a year-end review, I'll have most of these pages populated with Japanese. So the biggest takeaway from this mid-year review is that a notebook setup has to serve your life and not the other way around. If a system is causing you guilt or too much pressure, then that might be a sign that it needs a pivot and a bit more honesty about what you really need and what's working for you. Leaning into these principles has really allowed me not just to learn more about myself and how I work, but to become more flexible, versatile, and focus on being effective in the purposes that I have for each aspect of my life, whether that's work, continued learning, mindfulness practice, fitness, you name it. Like I said, while notebooks are meant to be filled, they're also just as much about how filling the pages makes you feel. It's really easy to look at a highly optimized, microscopic layout that looks great on an Instagram photo or a Pinterest board and feel like you're missing the secret to making your notebooks work for you. But I think leaning into our natural journaling instincts or planning instincts, taking the time to revisit, which the mid-year is actually perfect for, And allowing our thoughts to flow is really the secret to coming up with tools and notebook systems that work for you. There is zero shame in needing to pivot. It might even push you to be more creative when it comes to how you use your tools. In fact, part of me only wanted to start talking about these systems when they've proven something, like when I get my JLPT N4 certification in Japanese, or when I've finished a degree program, or when I have perfect spreads to show you. But I'm actually pushing myself to share, not just for accountability, but because I realized there should be more content around the process itself and not just the highlights and wins that we tend to get flooded with on our social media feeds. I am admittedly very good at cramming, and putting pen to paper has made me realize that that's a skill I shouldn't shame, but it's also pushed me to grow in that I've learned what skills I need to build to complement my ability at cramming. Things that are low friction that gain me consistency and a good rhythm, not forcing consistency that I don't have, but making the inconsistency visible to me in real time so that it offers me enough insight that I need. There's really no single right way to use a notebook. What looks perfectly organized for one person can feel like a total creative trap for another. And if your brain just needs 2 or 3 pages to let your thoughts breathe, forcing them to microscopic boxes is just going to lead to burnout. That's one key insight that doing this mid-year review has brought for me, and I hope that yours brings a lot of useful observations as well. Friendly reminder that your setup needs to serve your actual life and not an idealized version of it, even if that looks like a season of blank pages. I'd love to hear from you guys if you found this helpful and how your notebooks are holding up now that we're halfway through the year. Did your January setup survive? Or are you doing some pivots like I did? Please let me know in the comments below, and if you've made it this far, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell me what your favorite journaling emoji is so that I know who made it to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.